Good. So $25 billion is a lot of money. I don't mind a share in that, and I'm, you know, ready to quit my job. But Google being Google, I can't do that. It's much more fun inside Google. Okay, so let's get started. So two things that sort of mentioned were very critical about app development. First thing was you need to have the right strategy. He also emphasized very strongly on the right user experience. Now I know you guys would be like super good at coding development, so I know that you can churn out the best possible apps. But these two things we need to focus on a little more, right? And we are going to talk in this session more about the user experience part. So that's where we are spending 45 minutes in this session. Few questions for you guys. Firstly, and I want the answers yes or no. How many of you love Google products? Yes or no? Yes. Awesome. How many of you find them easy to use? Yes or no? Okay. How many of you find them useful? Okay. And how many of you find the user experience to be good? Damn, I'm doing a bad job. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have ever wondered how do many of these Google products manage to kind of cross the threshold of a good user experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you behind the scene and tell you what we do differently that kind of results in a better user experience and more love from customers. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about 10 of these principles that we stick to in Google and through which we achieve the right kind of user experience. But before we start over there, I would like to firstly understand my audience. So how many of you guys are students over here? Wow, G-Race is not a bad reason to bunk college, huh? How many of you are professional developers working in, almost half of them. Okay, so we have a fairly mixed crowd. Any designers apart from me? Oh, there's one. Oh, okay, their hands popping up. Okay, cool. So we have a fairly mixed crowd of students and professionals. So I'm going to tone my presentation accordingly. So since we have a mix of people, how many of you guys get confused between UX, UI, usability, look and feel design, right? How many of you guys get confused? I mean, a few years back, I used to think they're the same thing, right? So good. So let's start with first thing. So as I said, we are going to, okay, it's over there. Yeah. We are going to talk about 10 top UX considerations in Google. But before that, we will spend like a good 7-8 minutes to kind of create a level playing field so that we understand what UX is, and then probably we can start talking about what we do differently for UX. So a good way of defining what UX is and understanding what UX is by kind of talking about what UX is not. Okay? So I have 5 pointers over here, and they might pretty much cover all the aspects of what UX is not. Okay? So let me start with the first one. UX is not just about UI design and usability. Now, this is the biggest misconception. People say, hey, I have a UX team. What the UX team does is they just churn out mocks. No, UX is much more broader. UI is just placement of elements across the page. Usability is a set of principles that if you follow correctly, you might be able to achieve the right kind of ease of use for your site. But user experience is a lot bigger than that. We'll come to that. Okay. First point. So apart from UI and usability, it kind of covers aspects of emotional aspects, visceral and learnability issues, and a few more. This is a good example where, and Google is a good example for this. If you have noticed, at least a year and a half back or a year back, Google used to just focus on ease of use, speed, and how useful that product is for the user, right? And then one fine day realized, hey, we are not covering all the aspects of user experience. Our products are not delightful. Our products are not beautiful, right? And people don't get associated with our product because they're beautiful. So, and that is why they kind of redesigned the whole thing. They had a visual language running across all the products, and you would have noticed the new designs of Gmail and Maps and every other Google properties that you use. So it's very critical to understand these facets because most of the times we are focusing just on usability issues or UI issues or how it looks and feel. But there are other aspects which we need to kind of look into. I cannot get into all of them right now. But the fact is, there are a lot of things that get involved in UX. It's not just the UI or usability. There are a lot of people who work on a project, and if I belong to the design team, and there are a lot of people within the design team who have different roles. It's very critical to understand those roles, right? They are working on the same product, but they are looking at different aspects of the product, even from a design standpoint, right? There's an information architect who's trying to create a right taxonomy across the product. There's a visual designer who's trying to create an appealing feel for the product, a better visual experience, and then the usability aspects who are trying to test it out if it works properly. Okay, that was point number one. Point number two, user experience is not about just users. It says user experience, but it's beyond that. What do I mean by that? User experience is also about business objectives, technology objectives. So as a designer in Google, I cannot just rely on, hey, this is what the users need, this is what I want. No. After a point when I'm advocating for the user, I also need to kind of check, hey, is my design meeting all the business needs, right? Is my design feasible at all? So one of the good examples that we kind of adhere to in Google is this particular example where we talk about desirability, feasibility, and viability. So this is called a key-lease triangle. Desirability is what people want, what the users want. That's where I come in, right? And I always approach a product from that direction. But after a point, I also have to validate my assumptions, my designs, if they are meeting the business needs. If the business wanted, we want like 1 million users in 2 months. So is my design kind of aiding that? Or is it just my design is kind of hovering around the fun part of it, and that my design might not be able to churn out 1 million users? So that's critical. Third point, UX is a step in the process. A biggest misconception across the whole industry. People think that, we have everything ready. Now we'll find a UX guy. He will create the mocks for us, and we are good to go. So user experience is not about just creating mocks. It has to start from day one when the product has been conceptualized, right? It has to be integrated into everything that you are doing, which pertains to that particular product, right? This is a good example. You have to start thinking of user experience from the day you start making a strategy for the project. The day you scope out a project, okay, these are 10 things I would like to do in the project. The time when the designer starts working and creating the structure of and the skeleton of the site, and the day when the front-end coder kind of churns out the UI. So at every step, UX has to be considered. It cannot be just like one segment, okay, UX done, check box, we are done with it. Fourth one, it's not the role of just one person. I'm a UX designer in Google. My job is to kind of design the right experience, but to deliver the right experience is the job of everyone in the team, the product manager, the engineers, everyone. So they own the user experience as much as I do. And this is a thinking that has to kind of go deep down in the company, right? You might be a small startup, or you might be trying to create an app with your friend, but whosoever is in the team has to be equally responsible for the user experience. This is a good example that says that. Because I've been into so many discussions where the PM will come with a laundry list of features. Okay, we want to push everything out. No, it cannot happen. It might just kill the user experience. So this one is pretty good. Okay, last one. User experience is not a choice, right? Your experience is going to happen. I mean, you design it, you don't design it, you'll end up with an experience. But the fact is that if you have not thought about it, you have not designed it properly, high probability it's going to be bad. And that's something that you really don't want, okay? So these are the 5 things. Firstly, let me go back. Firstly, let me recap from here. Okay, it's not about design and UI design or usability. It's not about the user. It's not only about the user. It's not just a step in the process. It's not the responsibility of just one person. And lastly, you cannot avoid it. It's not a choice. Okay. So we talked about what UX is not. So if in a line, if I have to say what UX is, it's about designing everything where the customer or the user comes in contact with the product. Now, it could be if I'm designing a phone, it could be the phone itself, the UI that runs on the phone, the packaging that in which the phone is packed, the call center experience, if you call a call center relating to any problem, the experience over there. So the experience should be seamless all across. Okay, so with this, I assume that we have a collective common understanding of what UX is. Based on that, I'll move to the next section, which is about top 10 UX considerations at Google. What is that few things that we do differently that creates a difference? Shall we start? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. First, focus on the user. It's a cliched thing, but it's something it's very core to Google, It's one of their founding principles. You focus on the user, everything else will follow. But what do I mean when I say focus on the user? So what I mean to say is that whenever you're having a discussion about a feature or a new feature, you need to advocate for the user. You need to keep the user's need in the center and then talk about different aspects. Whenever you are prioritizing work, you need to think, hey, which feature is going to be useful to the user? So those kind of discussions. Second point, prioritize what's best for them. So imagine a scenario when you have to complete 20 features, you have 2 weeks, and you realize you can just kind of manage to finish 3, right? Which 3 will you pick? The easiest to develop, the ones that might give you a little more money, or the ones that the users might enjoy a little more. So at Google, we always pick the last one, where we feel, okay, these could be the 3 features which would be like super useful to the users. Even if it takes like 3 days of extra time, we'll work over the weekends, we'll push them out. So always our consideration is what's good for the user. Let's do that. There are a couple of techniques that we use at Google to do that. Use cases and personas. So if many of you are engineering students, I don't think you would have used use cases. And similarly, personas. So let me just talk about that in a second. I'll get to it in a while also. So, but what I want to show you are a few examples how we try to do it at Google, right? So let's take the first one, put them at the center of every decision. So how many of you are Gmail users over here? Wow, almost everyone. Okay. So how many times have you felt that you've sent a mail and you're like, oh, damn, I didn't attach the file? How many? How many times have you felt, oh, damn, I didn't CC the right people, or I did that spelling mistake, or damn, I shouldn't have sent that mail at all, right? We have been in these scenarios every time. And every time we wish, if I could call that mail back, that would have been wonderful, right? Now, we always wanted to have that feature, but the problem was that the development team used to say once the mail is thrown out of the exchange, it's maybe gone to a different exchange, it's not at all possible to get it back. Even the legal team used to say, you know what, if I've sent a mail to you, it's your mail. I can't delete it from your mailbox, right? So the decision was, okay, we can't have an undo feature, right? But there's an engineer, and he's an engineer, he's not a designer. He came up with a solution. And the solution was that we will hold on to the mail. Once you hit the send button, we'll hold on to the mail for a few seconds, give you a chance to undo it if you realize you've done a mistake, right? And after 10 seconds, if you don't act to it, the mail will be sent across. It's a small solution, solves every problem, but the reason why we kind of reached to this solution was we kept the user in the center of our decision making. So I don't know if you guys know this feature. Does anyone know of this feature? A lot of you. Okay, cool. So those who don't know about this feature, they're still in beta, we're testing it out. You can go to settings, go to labs, and go to undo send, right? A cool feature. I was talking about personas. So personas are basically representations of your ideal user, right? Suppose I am developing an app, and I feel that most of my users are going to be big on social, right? They would be like big-time social users. So it defines what my ideal persona would be, what kind of job he would be doing, what kind of lifestyle he would be having. So once we have defined this, and then we are having a discussion, I can say, you know what, Robert is big on social. Why don't we create a solution which involves that, right? Why don't we create a solution through which, he can tweet about something and he can set up a party kind of thing. So having a persona, a real life person, makes it very easy to have that discussion with everyone around. Now, there are two important questions which come up over here. Firstly, your product can have more than one personas. For example, suppose I'm creating a marketing dashboard, right, for a company, where the CMO is going to take a look at it, where the marketing team is going to take a look at it, and where the sales team is going to take a look at it. Now, all these three different people have different set of needs and wants, right? So what we do is we generally create three different personas. And whatever we are trying to do, we try to test it out. Okay, is the CMO going to be using this feature? No, she's not going to be using this feature, but this is going to be used by the salesperson. Okay, so we can hide this from here and we can show this to this guy. So we personalize UIs for them. So that's where personas become very, very handy. And the common misperception is that it takes a lot of effort to generate these personas. Frankly, it's not. If you understand your user, you can get inside a room with the folks who are working, narrow down to an ideal user, give him a name, give him an image, describe him how he is, and you can actually benefit from it a lot. Use cases. Ideally, it's supposed to be a PM's job. PM is supposed to write the PRD or the use cases. But when a fresh project is starting, many a times you'll find designers in Google also scribbling down use cases. Why? Because they think of the end-to-end user experience. They think, okay, the user is coming to this site the first time, he needs to sign up. But before sign up, we need to create the right kind of trust that he signs up with us. So we need to have a blurb or text over here which talks about what we are doing, how they can benefit. So these are the use cases that the designer also sometimes passes on to the PM, and then he kind of incorporates that. So if you look at this, I don't know if it's very clear. This is a simple Google spreadsheet. I have just written down the use cases or titles. I've written down next to it what's the purpose that we are trying to solve. And then in the next column, we are just trying to say what are the highlight features over here. It becomes very handy in the initial days of a project because without spending any time on any actual work, many of the confusions are resolved over here, right? Suppose I was suggesting an auto-suggest for cities, right? And my backend wasn't able to support that, right? The PM would write, okay, we need an auto-suggest. The PM will say, okay, we need a city input. The designer would say, okay, we need it to be an auto-suggest. The engineer will come and comment over here, you know what, we can't have it because we can't pull so much data on the backend. So those kind of discussions are resolved over here rather than spending time on them at a later stage. So it becomes very, very handy. Tip number 2, or consideration number 2. Google always thinks very big, and as designers, we also encourage to think at the larger scale. But at the start of a project, we know that, hey, this project is going to be used by, say, 10,000 people in the initial days. But because of that, we don't scale down on our vision. Our vision is always, hey, what happens if this product is being used by 1 million people, right? So that's how we start working on things. But you might argue that, hey, I have a small company, I have a small infrastructure, I have a small server, I can't think of that large-scale solutions. Might be true, but definitely not in the case of UX. Because in UX, you have to think of that bigger picture. What's the final experience that you're going to provide maybe a year down the line? And then probably you can work backwards, scale it down, and see what's feasible right now. If you try to make or envision what's possible now, whenever you try to scale it up, it's going to be broken, and you'll end up with a broken user experience. So thinking big is very important, especially be ambitious when you're scoping it out. Provide social hooks. Everyone knows that, and Saurabh also talked about this. Social hooks are very critical, not only in terms of getting traffic to your site, it's also proving to be a very good mechanism for gathering feedbacks, and in certain cases, it's also helping for customer support as well. So social tools. Launch early and iterate. A big problem for being ambitious in your scope is that people sometimes get stuck to that big picture, right? You might spend like months in your bedroom writing the most complicated code and churning out an app, but if you don't throw it out in the market the right time, you would have no idea how the users are going to react to it. And this is something we do at Google very often. We always launch products in beta, because we know that we will be able to complete it in a better way once we know how the users are reacting to it. So launch early is something we do every time. This is just an example where if you have a +1, you have a like, you have comment, Twitter, you can have Twitter links. It always helps you kind of bring traffic, feedback, and customer support. Point number 3. The teams in Google invest a lot of time in research. Before we get onto something, we invest a lot of time studying who our users are, what are the problems they are facing. And people in the industry and many of the companies that I personally know, they feel that investing in research is a bad idea, especially for a small startup, which is completely wrong. You can have a research in like a very short span of time with minimal amount of money, and that can save you months of effort down the line. So we generally, what we do is everyone would be doing in certain ways, but most of the people who are working the team, everyone signs up onto competitor products. We use them day in and day out. We know very well where they fail and where they succeed. We know very well what's the need gap, and that is reflected in the product that finally comes out from Google. Validate assumptions with your friends. When I say friends over here, I mean coworkers, relatives, anyone you find who fits the ideal user, the persona that you've already created. It's never too early for a feedback, and the earlier you ask it, the better it is for you. So, but it's very critical how you phrase that particular question. Like suppose if I am planning to start up, I'm into cycling, and I want to start up an online store where I'm selling cycles, right? So, and this is just an idea, I haven't done anything. But ideally what we would do is that we'll start bouncing off this idea. Hey, you know what, I want to start a bicycle online selling shop. What do you think you would expect as a cyclist, right? Someone will say, you know what, I want all the top models up there. Right? Someone will say, you know what, I want the top ones, and I also want the best-selling ones. Right? So when you start talking to people, you get a feel of the people. What are they expecting to see? Where they are expecting to see, which is very useful, and I'll show you how we do it. Creating quick prototypes. So as I was saying, to validate assumptions, many a times quick prototypes help a lot. Now, when people think of Google, we think of, hey, they're all geeks in there. People can churn out 1,000-line Java code in a couple of hours. But when we start prototyping, this is how we start. So I wanted to start a bicycle online shop. I said, hey, you know what? I want to learn in mind. What do you see in this mock? Right? What do you see in this image? So the person will say, okay, you know what? Yeah, there's the logo. There's something in the center. Probably I can search for a cycle. There are 2 dash contacts or for sign in. Then I have these cards, which could be bicycle images, and then there are tabs at the bottom. Then there's a breadcrumb, which is confusing. I don't know what they are. And they have the left hand. So if you realize, the whole website is in the form of post-its, which we can move around, right? So the top ones are the products. The daily special could be your featured cycle. On the right-hand side, the post-it is the customer profile, which is the profile of the user, and on the left-hand side, we have all the other tabs. It's very useful. We have like 3 or 4 A3 sheets. We have stuck these post-its over there. Go to the people and say, okay, what do you feel about this? And then the feedback is, you know what, I want the daily special on the top, because every time I want to come there, I want to see something new. Because I visit the site like 10 times a day. I don't buy every time, but I would like to see what's new every time. Right? So this gives us a very good picture, okay, where are we heading towards? And we also, when we start working off this, we are like completely sure that this is going to work, right? So this works wonders for us. Fourth consideration, make the first engagement count. This is very, very important for us, and I know teams who slog for this, because That's the first and kind of the last opportunity you get to impress your user, to tell them what you are doing for them, to tell them how they can benefit from your product, right? So first engagement counts a lot for us, and many a times we try to just let them know, okay, these are the cool things that you can do on the site, and this is how you can do it. Demonstrate trust and inspire confidence, especially if it's an e-commerce site or we are asking for details from personal details from users. We try to create an impression or a feel that their data is going to be secure with us. We are trustworthy partners. And how we can do it, in the best way that you would have seen, if there's a terms and conditions, there's a checkbox at the bottom, right? At many places you'll see the checkbox is already selected, and you go and click and you move next. But in Google, we make it a point we never select the checkbox, because that gives a chance to the user and creates a feel of transparency that we're not like forcing you in. If you're fine, you love the product, come in. If you're not fine, no, we are not going to force you in. So that's critical. And you can continue this trust through a dialogue with your users. If you have managed to get their emails, during the sign-up process, I'm not talking about spamming them, but you can always send them a thank you mail. Hey, you know what? We have just started working on this feature. Thank you for joining. We would be working like really hard on this product. We'll be churning out new things every week, and we'll love to keep you posted, right? People love it. People feel that they are being involved with the product growth. This is a good example of how the Android team tried to kind of weave this first impression over here. This particular setting part is the most monotonous part. You have to set your country, language, several other settings. Android tries to teach you how to use the UI. So it's like very, very monotonous. It can be like really boring to people, but the way Android team kind of created it was that you don't feel that time that you spend with this whole section of the introduction. It's very, very intuitive. It's very easy to use, and many times it's fun. So a good example of how to create the right kind of first engagement. Again, building a conversation with the user could be very, very ideal. And a good way is to have a social angle again built into it. Fifth point, and which is the most important thing in Google, is speed. Everything that happens in Google, be it from design or developing, we are aiming for more and more speed. But the funny part of it is that many times speed is not in our control. Maybe the user is in a low bandwidth has a low bandwidth connection, or maybe he's in an area where the connectivity is not great. So what do we then do? In certain ways, it's not my problem, but we still try to solve those scenarios, those use cases. I'll get to it, how we solve that in more detail. But at a high level, we try to reduce the unnecessary clutter on the page. And that's one of the reasons why you might feel Google's pages are very clean, because there's no clutter. Sorry. There's no clutter. Every element on the page, we question it. Okay, why do we need it there? Do we really need it there? Are the users going to use it? So what advantages are the users going to get it? So we analyze every element of it. We remove things that we feel are not going to churn out as benefit as they are supposed to do. So we just remove them. Optimize page elements and layout. The wonderful engineers at Google, they do this job amazingly well. They care about even 1 KB of their file. They do everything to kind of reduce the file sizes as low as possible. Support muscle memory actions. So this is very interesting because speed is a collective phenomena. There's a speed which the software or the product provides you. Then there's a speed which the user finishes the task with, right? So suppose I was signing up for something, right? The page loaded in 0.001 second, right? But it was so complex that the user took 10 minutes to complete it. So finally, the user ended up taking 10 minutes and 0.001 seconds to complete it. So speed is dual in nature. Where in the first part, where we try to avoid clutter, and optimize. We were trying to enhance speed from our end. But on the other side, we also try to enhance speed from the user's side. One good way that we do it is we support muscle memory actions. I don't know if you've thought about this. How many of you have pushed a door which had pull written on it, or vice versa? That happens because our memories do have some sort of our muscles do have some sort of memory. So if there's a door and there's a handle, our hand will react first to pull it. Before the eye could see it, send it to the brain could analyze it, send it back to the arm saying, you know what, you need to push the door, right? So our muscles sometimes react faster than our eyes and brains. And it happens in the real world, it also happens on the web, right? I'll show you an example a little later. But first, let's talk about optimizing. So this page loaded in what, 0.22 seconds, within a fraction of a second. If you look at this page very closely, I don't think you can figure out any element on the page which is not necessary at all. There used to be icons with web images, maps, everything on the site. We got rid of those icons. We felt we don't need those icons. They increase some 12 KB or something file size. We got rid of them. So this page has been optimized from a design point of view to be the lightest possible. Okay. Now I have a personal battle against these kind of sites. How many of you guys have sites with a loader? There you are. So now, if you think of it, this was a technology choice that we take, right? And what happens is that the end experience that the users get is that I have to wait for 100% of my patients to get this site 100% loaded, right? So at Google, we try to avoid anything which lets a person wait. Okay. So this is the muscle memory part. So this was a page that we had. We launched it, and it didn't work properly. And we changed something. We relaunched it. The click-throughs went up by 300%. Any idea what was wrong on this page? Sorry? And we have a cup for this. What's wrong with that? Here you get it. So yeah, that's the right answer, because our muscle memory always kind of associates anything towards the right is for going next. Anything towards the left-hand side is for going back, right? What happens over here is that continue has been placed on the left-hand side, cancel on the right-hand side. Even before my eyes could see, hey, that's cancel written, my hand has already clicked, and I'm out of the flow. Click-throughs go down, right? So fix this, and we got the huge jump in the click-throughs. So muscle memory is something not many people think of, but it's a very, very critical thing, especially while we are placing in critical action buttons like buy now, sign up now, those kind of things. Very critical over there. Okay, 6th point. Don't make the users do the work. If you can intelligently remove the workload of the user's head, that's the best thing possible. And that's, again, something we continue to try at Google. How can we pre-fill all the forms that we show the users, how we can minimize input from them that we need, so that it becomes like a really seamless, fast task for them. First thing that we do is prioritize content. So every page has a lot of content. The whole team sits, especially the PM, the copywriter, and us, and we talk about, okay, what's the content piece that really, really needed on this page? What's not needed at all, or what are the things that might be useful for the users, right? Once we kind of stack rank all this information, we definitely give the prominence to the top 2 or 3 places, depending on the amount of information it has. And there are things that are not required are completely removed. If things are required, then they're kind of placed accordingly. But the most critical on the page is going to be at the top of the page. And there was also once a thumb rule that you need to have 8 critical things above the fold of the page, but I don't know if you stick to it anymore. Follow conversations and ensure conventions and ensure consistency. Now, if we have been looking at Google UIs across different products, you would have noticed that they have become much more consistent, right? We have the bar, the gray bar at the top, we call it the sandbar. We have the product title on the left-hand side. The UI looks pretty similar for the various products. The reason is that people learn how to use a product gradually. And if you can utilize that learning for a different product, their learning curve will be like fairly flat, and they will get onto the product really quick. For example, suppose you have a logo. It's a general convention that if you click on the logo, you go to the home page, right? So if you are having a logo, make sure that you follow that convention because people would be expecting it to happen. Only ask for what you really need, and this is something I feel that designers, product managers overdo, because they feel कि आज तो ये बकरा फंस गया, so जितनी information लेने ले लो आज. Especially during the sign-up time. I mean, I've seen, give me your name, give me your email ID, give me your phone number, type a username, retype a username, type a password, retype a password, give me your pet's name. It's 3-field sign-up. You give me your email address, your name, your password, and you're done. You can start with your blog in 3 easy steps. So it takes hardly, 25 seconds to, start working on your blog. So that's the fastest that I have seen. Okay. 7th, think before you speak. So in Google, as I was talking earlier, there are a lot of people who are kind of responsible for the user experience, and one of them is definitely content writers. Now, for smaller companies and startups, it could be friends who are really good at language. So you need to always recheck the terminologies that you are using, right? You have to refine and iterate those terminologies. A good way that we do is that the researchers, they have, like if you're using tabs, they'll write the names of those tabs on those cards. They'll show to user, okay, what do you understand from this? What do you understand from this? So basically, we're trying to understand what the user expects from that word, right? Like there was a few NGO sites that I saw. They had a help tag, right? And I clicked on the help, expecting that, okay, I can go and donate over there. But that was a site help, right? So these terminologies issues can be very critical, and they have to be addressed to. And for a successful product, as even Saurav was mentioning a while back, you need to have the right icons, right description for your apps at the App Center. Same thing applies over here. Last one, maintain a uniform tone of voice. So if you're talking to a user in a neutral tone, maintain it. What's a neutral tone? So suppose there's a button I say done. That's neutral. There's a tone which could be a little more commanding in nature, submit, right? It's the same thing. I could use 2 buttons for the same purpose, and there could be a tone which is much more formal. Cool, you are done, right? So these 3 words can form the names for 3 buttons which does the same action. But you need to pick the one that kind of provides you much more consistency. I have a good example to share. So this is the Google Store buildup. And if you look at the language used over here, it's like a friend is talking to me. If you look at closely, you will say, it kind of says that, you're just a step closer in finishing getting your end goal. And we are there to help you with it. Okay, so don't worry. If you look at the questions, the way they are framed, they are very self-explanatory. And even the answers that are expected from you, the examples have been given, okay, this is what you expect to this is the kind of language or this is the kind of content that has to go there. Otherwise, you'll find people typing ASDFG most of the times. A bad example, how we shouldn't do this. Again, this is an error message. Now, there are a lot of errors with this error message. To start with, it has a confirm button, right? What does a confirm button mean in an error message? And what are you expecting me to confirm? It's like a heart patient goes to a doctor and doctor says, confirm you are a heart patient. So confirm is really weird. That code 0xFF05, maybe it would be useful for the engineer, but the user doesn't care. I don't know what that is. But the funniest part is it says no SIM card or phone or the phone is turned off. If either of these 2 things are true, I shouldn't be seeing this message, right? So that's these kind of errors kind of reflect how deeply have you thought about the product, and we make sure that none of these occur in any of the Google products. So the terminologies, language is very, very critical as the UI. Okay, so if you look at the way we have been talking about these points, we started from keeping the user in the center. We talked about having a big picture. We talked about research. We talked about speed, and we talked about optimizing things, and we talked about what kind of language should we use. So if you notice, we are following a sequence of product development, right? Towards the tail end of it, and this is something that Google would die for, is testing. We test everything. And I'm sure you would have heard stories of Google testing weird things. But we do test a lot. And testing might occur in various ways. I mean, like, there's like a few of those more rigorous ones, where we launch bucket tests, A/B testing, everything. But before that, we have also a lot of informal testing. And I mean, the first one is something that probably folks over here, they want to do it, they can do it. Invite your friends for a lunch and make them test your product. Ask valid questions. Don't ask, do you like the product? Ask them, what do you like in the product? Okay? Or what you don't like in the product. Don't get angry if they don't like your product, because when you're working on a product, you get so attached to it that anyone saying anything against it, you might just throw them out of the party. Don't do that. But we test a lot. Many times it's informal, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in the next slide. We also try and break things a lot, because how much care we take, we cannot be 100% sure that it's going to work perfectly well, right? So we try and break things. Example, suppose there is a password field, right? Or suppose there's a telephone number field, right? We try to type random alphanumeric, numeric, more than 8 digits, more than 10 digits, all sort of permutation combination, and see if they throw error. One of the weirdest breaking incident that I got to know a few years back was we had developed an app, and there was a user who was using it in Mumbai, and he sent us a mail saying that, this app works amazingly well in my home and my office, but it doesn't work properly then when I'm traveling the local trains. And we were like completely puzzled, what goes wrong in the local trains? So we mailed back, hey, maybe it's the internet connectivity, which is causing the problem. He mails back saying, no, it's not a problem because everything else works fine. It's just this app. Then an engineer, his relative was there in US, in Mumbai. We made him do the same thing, and he also told the app crashes. And then we realized we had built in a feature where if you shake the phone, it refreshes the data. And that was such a stupid thing we couldn't have ever imagined that, that scenario where a person is traveling in a packed local train. I don't know how many of you have traveled in a Mumbai local train, but, it was hitting the server every 2 minutes, and it was crashing every time. So you never know how people are going to end up using your app or product, so you have to test it out for every possible scenarios. You remember we created the use cases earlier? That was the time when we were more focused on user. Okay, this is what they want. We have the personas. This is the time to go back and validate things with them. Go back and check, hey, have we met all the use cases that we had started with? Right? If we are missing something, should we build it now or can we push it later? But it's a good idea to validate them. While we are doing this testing and validating, the designers also, apart from the program managers, so even the designers create a bug tracking list where we write down all the UI related bugs, because many a times what happens in certain releases, only say 10% of the bugs were fixed, remaining 90% were left. So if we don't store them properly or archive them properly, we end up losing things that are not fixed. So designers do maintain a bug list at Google. Okay, second last point, is by reading to offer a helping hand. So if you realize, we have been in constant touch with the user. We have focused on it. We have done a lot of research. We have done testings at various points. but still the users are going to fail, and that's the truth. So how do we help them? A lot of focus in Google is kind of creating that help content for users, right? There's a special team who is working on a platform which can get you feedback. But individual products have a very good support system where many a times we give you context sensitive help. So if we know that when you're working on a complex interaction and you might get confused by these terms, you might find those terms explained nearby or in a tooltip. So this textual help is of great importance, and we take care of them. Write and update FAQs. So one good technique that we use, every time we talk to a user, we document it very properly. Each question they ask, we document it very properly so that at the end of it, when we are writing the FAQs, we have all the possible questions that the users can ask. So they will have answers to most of the queries that people will have once it's released out. And that's a very good way of constructing a very, very useful FAQ. So the copywriter works very closely with the researcher in this case. Solicit feedbacks. There are various mechanisms to do that. I'll be talking about them in a while. This is a good example of FAQ from Trader. And a lot of time has been kind of goes in creating these kind of really, really helpful content over there. Okay, this is one example I'd like to talk about. This is the S60 app for Google+. And we realized that people avoid giving feedback because it's like cumbersome. So we try to make it a little more easier for them. So every time someone clicks on this link, this is the radio button list that they see. And once they click on anything, they go to the next page and where it's on. But what's intelligent part of it is that we keep a track of what people are commenting. Especially, there's a comment section below it. You can write a special comment. And if we see that one point is trending more than the other, we keep updating these radio button list over there. So if there's there was a bug in in YouTube, suppose there was a bug in the commenting feature, and we see there's a lot of trending feedback for commenting, we will push it up, and you will be seeing it in those radio buttons over there. Last point, analyze usage. Saurabh also mentioned that this is very critical to understand where your product is failing. You might know how many people are using it, but it's very critical to understand where it's failing. And for that, the best way is that embed Google Analytics. We too have Google Analytics embedded in our products that you guys use. So we track every click, every page. We know at what point the user failed. Many a times this numerical data itself is enough to give us a feedback. Okay, this guy went till the last page, he clicked on the buy now button, but he didn't fill the credit card details. That means he lost interest, right? But in the other case where this guy filled the credit card details and then he opted out, what went wrong over there? So if you have that kind of detail, that might help you understand, okay, there's something horribly wrong on that last page. People are dropping off even after they have filled up the whole form. And that's the right time to run a research. Just ask him, okay, what is on this page that you're not comfortable with and because of which you're dropping. So analytics is a great tool to use. I'll just recap on everything that we talked about. Focus on the user, think big, invest time in research, go for the first impression, prioritize speed, don't make the users work, think before you speak, test everything, be ready to offer a helping hand, and analyze usage. So these are 10 things that the user experience teams across Google focus on. And probably these are the reasons why Google products are much more usable and delightful. So this was from me. If any of you is interested in user experience, you can go to the site, you can get all these resources, you can read about them. Or if someone is further interested, this is a course run by Stanford, free of cost. You can go and watch these videos online. And at the end of it, there's a test, and if you qualify that, you get a certification. So that's from me.